There's something about a roadside motel at night that doesn't feel like the rest of the world. The vacancy sign glowing in the dark, the numbered doors in a row, the parking lot with 2 or 3 cars in it and no way of knowing whose they are. It feels like a place outside of time, a place where normal rules don't quite apply, where no one knows where you are, where the walls between rooms are thin and the locks are old, and the person at the front desk barely looks up when you walk in. Most of the time, it's fine. Most of the time, you sleep badly and leave in the morning and forget all about it. But sometimes, just sometimes, something is waiting for you in one of those rooms. Tonight, we have 5 stories. All of them happened at roadside motels. All of them were submitted by real people. Their names have been changed, but what happened to them has not. Let's begin. Ryan was driving from Salt Lake City to Sacramento. It was October, and he'd made the mistake of starting late. By the time he hit the Nevada desert, it was past midnight, and the nearest city was 2 hours away. He'd been awake for 19 hours. When he saw the vacancy sign burning orange in the darkness, he pulled in without thinking twice. The motel was called the Desert Star Inn. 9 rooms, a small office, a soda machine that hummed like it was in pain. The sign above the office had lost a few letters. It read Desert Star Inn. Ryan thought about that for a second, then decided it didn't matter. The woman at the desk didn't say much. She gave him a key to room 6, told him checkout was at 10, and went back to whatever she was watching on the small TV behind the counter. Ryan paid in cash because the card reader had a handwritten out-of-order sign taped to it. He parked in front of room 6. He noticed that the light was on in room 9 at the far end of the row. The curtains were closed, but the light around their edges was steady and orange warm. He didn't think anything of it. He went inside and got ready for bed. Part 1. The knocking. He woke up at 2:40 a.m., not gradually, suddenly. The way you wake up when a sound pulls you out of sleep. He lay still in the dark, listening, telling himself it was nothing. Then it came again. 3 slow knocks on the shared wall between his room and room 7. RESE sound, 3 slow, deliberate knocks on hollow drywall. Not urgent, not panicked, slow and even, like a metronome. Ryan says what unsettled him wasn't the sound itself, it was the patience of it. Like whoever was knocking had been doing it for a long time and had no intention of stopping. He knocked back twice. The knocking stopped. He waited. A full minute of silence. Then it started again from a different place, lower on the wall near the floor. Ryan got up and turned on the lamp. He stood in the middle of the room listening to something knock on the baseboard from the other side of the wall, slow and steady, working its way along the length of the room like it was following him. When he moved, it moved. When he stopped, it stopped. He called the front desk. It rang 8 times before the woman picked up. He told her someone in room 7 was knocking on the wall. She told him room 7 was empty. He told her it didn't sound empty. She told him she'd send someone to check. No one came. The knocking eventually stopped on its own, around 3:30 a.m. Ryan lay awake on top of the covers, fully dressed, until sunrise. Part 2. What he found in the morning. At checkout, Ryan asked the woman at the desk about room 7. She was evasive in a practiced way, the way people are evasive when they've been asked something many times before and have a ready answer that technically isn't a lie. Desk woman. We don't rent that one out. Plumbing issue. Ryan. Someone was knocking on the wall from inside it at 3 in the morning. Desk woman. Old buildings settle. Pipes knock. Ryan. It followed me around the room. She didn't answer that. She took his key and turned back to her TV. Ryan sat in his car for a moment before leaving. He wasn't sure why. He says he was trying to talk himself out of something, the impulse to walk down to room 7 and look through the window. He almost did it. Instead, he looked in his rearview mirror. The light was still on in room 9. The same steady, warm glow behind the curtains. The same as it had been when he'd arrived the night before. At 3 in the afternoon, after what had to be 15 or more hours, the light in room 9 was still on. He drove away. He didn't call anyone about it. He tells himself it was a pipe. He says if he says it enough times, it almost sounds true. The knocking followed me across the room. Pipes don't do that. Danny had just left her ex-husband. She'd packed 2 bags in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, while he was at work, and driven until the adrenaline wore off, which turned out to be somewhere in the Mississippi Delta, on a 2-lane highway surrounded by nothing but flat black farmland and the occasional cluster of trees. The Lakeview Motel wasn't near a lake. She'd made a small, sad joke about that to herself when she saw the sign. It was a U-shaped building from the 1960s, 14 rooms, a small pool that had been drained and not refilled, filled instead with dead leaves and a lawn chair nobody had retrieved. She checked in because she was tired, and because it was cheap, and because she needed to feel like she'd made it somewhere, even if somewhere was just a room with a lock. She was in room 3, first floor, middle of the row. She put the chain on the door. She ordered delivery to the motel address and ate on the bed and watched TV and let herself cry a little and then felt better. By 10 p.m. she was asleep. She thought, maybe this is okay. Maybe this is going to be okay. She woke up at 1:17 a.m. because her phone was ringing. Part 1. The call, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She answered. Voice, you need to leave. A man's voice, low, completely flat. No inflection, no urgency, no emotion at all. Just the words. Danny, who is this? Voice. You need to leave right now. Don't turn on the lights. Don't open the curtains. Just take your bags and go. The line went dead. Danny sat there in the dark for a moment. She told herself it was a wrong number, someone calling the wrong room, maybe trying to warn someone else. She put her phone down and pulled the covers up. Then she heard it. From directly outside her window, so close it sounded like it was right against the glass, the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps, back and forth, pacing. She counted 7 steps one way, pause, 7 steps back. She did not turn on the lights. She did not open the curtains. She grabbed her 2 bags from the floor without turning on a single light, using the glow of her phone screen to see. She got her keys. She put her shoes on. She unlatched the chain as quietly as she could. She opened the door fast, stepped out, and walked straight to her car without looking left or right. She was in the driver's seat with the engine running in under 30 seconds. She looked at the window of room 3 in her rearview mirror as she pulled out. There was a man standing in front of it. He wasn't moving. He was facing the window. He had something in his right hand that she couldn't identify in the dark. She left. She didn't call the police until she was 20 miles away. She gave them the motel name and described the man. They told her they'd send a car to check it out. Part 2. The follow-up. 2 days later, Danny called the local sheriff's department to follow up. She'd been thinking about it constantly, who the man was, who had called her, whether the person who called had been watching her, whether they'd been inside at some point. The deputy she spoke to was quiet for a moment before answering. Then he said that they had sent a car that night. They'd found the man outside room 3. He was a guest staying in room 2, next door. He'd heard something on the roof above his room and had gotten up to look. He hadn't been doing anything wrong. Danny. What was in his hand? Deputy. A flashlight. He hadn't turned it on yet. Danny. What did he hear on the roof? Another pause. Deputy. He said it sounded like something dragging itself. Heavy. Moving slow. He said he thought maybe it was an animal. We checked the roof. There was nothing up there, but there was damage to the edge, like something had been gripping it. We couldn't explain the marks. Danny asked who had called her. The number had been traced to a payphone outside the motel, in the parking lot. There was no payphone at the Lakeview Motel. There hadn't been for 20 years. She still has the call in her phone's history. Unknown number. 1:17 a.m. 41 seconds. She doesn't know who it was. She says it doesn't matter. She says whoever it was, they were right. Marcus and Yolanda were on a road trip to visit family in Denver. They'd been driving since early morning and made it through Missouri and most of Kansas before Marcus's back started bothering him enough that they pulled off the interstate at the first sign they saw. The Prairie Rest Motel had 6 rooms and a separate house attached to one end, the kind of setup you see at older family-run places where the owners live on site. A handwritten sign in the office window said, "Back in 5 mins," with a small smiley face underneath it, which they both found charming. They waited 15 minutes before someone came. The man who came was older. maybe late 60s, stocky, wearing dirty work gloves. He introduced himself as Walt and said he was the groundskeeper, not the owner. The owner was his sister, who was out running errands. He checked them in for one night, gave them room 4, took their cash. He had a way of looking at them, not threatening, just very direct and unblinking, that Marcus said later made him feel like he was being assessed. They went to the room. They ordered fast food from a place 20 minutes down the road. They ate, watched a movie on Yolanda's laptop, and went to sleep by 11. Part 1. He was already there at 6 a.m. Yolanda got up to use the bathroom. She looked out the window on her way back to bed. Walt was in the parking lot. He was standing next to their car, not doing anything to it, just standing near it, facing their door. She woke Marcus. They both looked. Walt didn't move. He was just standing there, slightly too close to their car, in the grey early morning light. Marcus knocked on the window glass. Walt looked up. He raised one hand, not a wave, just a slow lift, like an acknowledgement. Then he walked around the side of the building and disappeared. Marcus, that's not normal. Yolanda, let's just check out early. They packed quickly. Marcus went to the office to turn in the key. The office was locked. He knocked. No answer. He went around to the attached house and knocked on that door. No answer. He walked back to the car. Walt was behind it now, standing at the back bumper. He had a length of rope in his hands, not coiled, just loosely held, hanging. He was looking at them. Marcus, hey. We're checking out. We left the key on the dresser. Walt nodded slowly. Walt, road's wet this morning. You'll want to be careful, especially at the merge back onto the interstate. Okay. Thanks, Walt. Some people don't make it to the merge. They got in the car. Yolanda says Marcus's hands were shaking when he put it in reverse. They pulled out slowly and Walt stood in the parking lot watching them go. Part 2. The merge. The road back to the interstate was a 2-lane county highway, mostly straight. The merge onto I-70 was about a mile from the motel. Marcus was driving carefully. Walt's comment about the merge had lodged in his brain, and even though he told himself it was just an odd thing to say, he slowed down as they approached it. There was a long left-hand curve just before the on-ramp. In the middle of the lane, on the curve, just past the point where it would be visible until you were almost on top of it, there was a large piece of truck tire tread, flat, black, the size of a mattress. On a dry road at normal speed, Marcus probably could have swerved around it. On a wet road, at speed, it could have been very different. Marcus pulled over and got out and moved it off the road. He stood there for a moment with his hands on his knees, breathing. Yolanda asked him if Walt had known about the tire debris, if that's what he'd meant. Marcus said he didn't know. He said the other possibility, that Walt had put it there, was something he wasn't ready to think about while he was still on a county road a mile from the Prairie Rest Motel. He thought about it later though. He thinks about it still. He says the rope bothers him most. He can't explain the rope. Some people don't make it to the merge. Route 9, Vermont. Submitted by a woman who asked to remain fully anonymous. She told us only that her name starts with L, that she's in her 40s and that she's never told anyone this story except her sister. She asked us to change every identifiable detail. We have. Elle was hiking the long trail in Vermont alone. A 10-day solo section hike she'd planned as a way to reset after a difficult year. On the 4th day, an unexpected rainstorm turned her route into a mud channel, and she came down off the trail at a trailhead she hadn't planned to use, about 8 miles from the nearest town. She'd heard there was a small motel on Route 9, the kind that catered to hikers and hunters. She found it on foot, just as the rain got serious. The Birchwood Inn, log construction, 8 rooms in a single row, a small office with a hand-lettered rate card in the window. The door was unlocked. There was no one inside. There was a note on the counter that said key for room 5 on hook, 45 night, honor system, payment box on counter. She was soaked and cold, and it was getting dark. She paid for 2 nights, took the key, and found room 5, part 1. The details that were wrong. The room was clean. That was the first thing she noticed. Not dusty clean or roughly clean, genuinely, carefully clean, like it had been prepared for someone. The bed was made with the sheet folded down at a precise angle. There was a glass of water on the nightstand, filled to within an inch of the rim. She stood in the doorway for a moment, dripping on the threshold, and looked at that glass of water. It was full. It hadn't evaporated. It hadn't collected dust. Someone had put it there recently. She went in anyway. She was cold and tired, and she told herself the owner had been through recently to prep the rooms. But over the next hour, other things registered. The towels in the bathroom were folded into a neat fan on the rack, the way hotels do when they've been freshly laundered. The small bar of soap by the sink was unwrapped, as if someone had opened it for her. The TV remote had fresh batteries. She could tell because the battery compartment was slightly ajar, the way it is when you've just changed them. Someone had been in this room very recently, getting it ready for her, except no one had known she was coming. She'd found this motel by accident. She'd paid at a machine. She hadn't spoken to a human being since the trailhead. Part 2, the logbook. She found the guest book in the nightstand drawer when she was looking for a pen. Spiral-bound, the kind with a plastic cover filled with names and dates and little notes that hikers and hunters leave behind. She flipped through it the way you do when you're in an unfamiliar place and you want the reassurance of knowing others have been there before you. The last entry was dated 3 years prior. The handwriting was neat, the tone cheerful, someone talking about good fishing in the area and a recommendation for a diner in the nearby town. Normal motel logbook stuff. She looked around the room again. At the fresh water, the folded towels, the cracked battery cover. She turned to the very back of the logbook, the last pages. There was one more entry, written on the inside back cover in very faint pencil, not in the logbook's lined section. It was undated. It said, "If you're reading this, you've already seen it. Don't look at the mirror after dark. Don't open the window. It comes in through the window. I don't know what it wants, but it stayed all night at the foot of my bed and I couldn't move until sunrise. Leave at first light. Leave at first light." Elle closed the logbook. She turned the desk lamp on. She turned the bathroom light on. She turned on the TV at low volume for company. She sat on the bed with her back to the wall and she watched the window. She doesn't know exactly when she fell asleep. She knows it was after midnight. She knows that when she woke up at 5 a.m., just before first light, the glass of water on the nightstand was empty. She had not touched it. She had not touched it all night. She left at first light. She didn't look at the mirror. She says she never looked at the mirror. US 93, Arizona. Submitted by a group Tom, Kelsey, and Brett, all aged 26. This last story has 3 witnesses. Tom, Kelsey, and Brett were college friends driving from Phoenix to Las Vegas for a birthday weekend. Brett's birthday, his choice, which is why Brett is the one who got blamed afterward for everything that happened. Tom says it's not fair. Kelsey says it completely is. They'd taken a back route to avoid the weekend traffic. Somewhere on US 93 in the Arizona high desert, around 11 p.m., the car's front right tire blew out. No spare. They'd used it 2 months before, and Brett hadn't replaced it. No cell signal, no other cars, just flat desert, cold air, and the kind of dark that people who live in cities don't understand. About a quarter-mile back, they'd passed a motel. None of them had thought much about it when they drove past. Now they walked back to it. The Horizon Motor Court. 10 rooms. A blinking vacancy sign, 1 letter dark, so it read vacancy. The office light was on. Part 1. The night clerk. The man at the desk was young. Younger than them, maybe early 20s. And completely awake despite the hour. He was friendly in a way that felt calibrated, like he was performing friendliness rather than feeling it. He had a name tag that said Cole. They explained the situation. Cole gave them 2 rooms, a double for Tom and Brett, a single for Kelsey, and said he'd call a tow service in the morning. He said there was no tow service at this hour. They believed him. They had no choice. Cole showed them the vending machines at the end of the building. He pointed out the ice machine. He told them the Wi-Fi password, which turned out to be wrong. None of their devices connected. When Kelsey went back to ask about it, Cole was apologetic and gave her a different password. That one didn't work either. He said the router must be down and he'd look into it. She noticed, walking back to her room, that Cole watched her from the office window until she closed her door. She locked her door. She wedged a chair under the handle. Part 2. What Tom saw. Tom couldn't sleep. He was on his phone, trying to get one bar of signal, walking around the room in slow circles the way people do when they're trying to force a connection. Around 1 a.m., he went outside to try standing in different spots in the parking lot. That's when he noticed the rooms. The Horizon Motor Court had 10 rooms. They had been given rooms 1, 2, and 3. As Tom stood in the parking lot, he counted the doors under the glow of the vacancy sign. All 10 lights were on. Not just the rooms they were in, all 10. Warm light around every set of curtains, the same steady glow, all the way down the row. He walked to room 10, the last one, at the far end, and listened at the door. He heard a television. He walked back and listened at room 7. Television. Room 6. Television. Room 5. The same low, indistinguishable murmur of a TV in every single room. He went back to the office. Cole was at the desk. Tom, are all your rooms occupied tonight? Cole smiled. Cole, of course. Busy night. Tom, we didn't see any other cars in the lot when we pulled in. Cole, some folks come without cars. Tom stood there for a moment. Tom. In the middle of the Arizona desert, Cole stopped smiling. Cole, you should go back to your room. Keep your door locked. Don't open it until morning, regardless of what you hear. Tow service will be here at 7. Tom, what are we going to hear? Cole had already turned back to whatever was on his desk. Tom went back to his room. He locked the door. He texted Kelsey and Brett to lock theirs and not open them. He lay in bed and listened. At 2:30 a.m., he heard footsteps in the parking lot. Slow. Back and forth. More than one set. He was sure of it. Multiple people walking back and forth in front of the rooms, never stopping, never speaking. He looked through the peephole. He couldn't see anything clearly. The parking lot light was out, which it hadn't been earlier. Just shapes. Moving shapes in the dark, back and forth, patient and slow. He went back to bed. He did not open the door. Part 3. Morning. The tow truck arrived at 7, as promised. It was bright and warm and the desert looked completely ordinary. Tom, Kelsey, and Brett stood in the parking lot while their car was being loaded. All 10 motel room doors were closed. All the lights were off. There was not a single other car in the parking lot besides the tow truck and their car. Cole was behind the desk. He waved to them through the glass. He looked completely normal in the daylight. Just a young man working a morning shift at a slow motel. Kelsey says she went back inside to ask him one question before they left. Kelsey, who was in the other rooms last night? Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then Cole, I don't remember anyone else checking in last night. Do you? She didn't answer. She went back to the parking lot. The tow truck was ready. They left. None of them looked back at the Horizon Motor Court as they pulled onto the highway. Brett still hasn't replaced the spare tire. Tom says he doesn't take back roads anymore. He says traffic is fine. He says he'll sit in traffic for 6 hours if it means staying on the interstate. Kelsey says she would do the same. They've never talked about it beyond the drive home. They've never agreed on what to call it. But all three of them remember the same things, in the same order, with the same details. And none of them have ever been able to explain the lights in those rooms. All 10 of them. All night. With no other cars in the lot. Some folks come without cars. If you've experienced something at a motel, a hotel, or any place that didn't feel right, a story you've never told anyone, something that happened in a room with a bad lock and thin walls and a vacancy sign buzzing outside, send it to the email in the description. Names and locations are always kept private. There are more of these stories out there than you'd think. More than I'd like to think about at night. Stay safe. And if you have to stop for the night, maybe drive a little further first.